Alright, sup everybody, welcome back to the Path of Rage, and today we've got some more Star Citizen coverage. Last week saw an Inside Star Citizen and a Star Citizen Live. We're back to form on the regular shows, and tonight, right before the recording of this video, CIG dropped a new patch to the Evocati for 3.24, and I'm going to get into my experience playing with that for a couple of hours. So, I'm Rage Games, let's get into it. First up is Inside Star Citizen, which was a focus on level design and some of the developers behind it. This episode highlighted the fact that designing the levels and the playable spaces in Star Citizen involves multiple teams from art to code, systems and mission designs, and how all of these aspects of Star Citizen fit into a location and its place in the verse. They said that there are several main areas of focus when they're designing of a level. So the first is readability. There's flow and leading lines, options, clustering, and scale and proportion. With the readability, this is all about how the area looks, so players can instinctively understand where to go, what to do, the difference between something basic like a locked door and an unlocked door, for example. If you're in a dark area, you should still be able to see an enemy player or NPC in the dark in some form. That's what the readability is. With the flowing and leading lines, it's making a traversal through a space interesting for the players in both combat and non-combat missions, and even just exploring the area. Leading lines can be things like cabling players can follow to a point of interest in a location, or a flow might be more influenced by the placement of mission givers, bringing more players into an area than there might be otherwise. When it comes to options, CIG wants players to be able to decide how to complete missions in their own way. So you could do the direct assault and just go in guns blazing and hope you don't die, full on stealth if you want, or some kind of mix in between, along with other options involving environmental puzzles and codes and such like that for players to solve in order to move forward. So maybe you don't want the full stealth or the full combat. You know, there's a mix of ways that players can choose to go through a mission. They spoke about clustering, which is more on the layout side of level design, making organic, natural points of interest at locations by clustering related points, such as a landing pad with groups of buildings all centered around it in a believable manner. And finally, they were also talking about scale and proportion, which that's something that Star Citizen is, in my opinion, has absolutely nailed to date. Size matters in area composition and how a space feels to be in, with the devs pointing out that everything is big, then nothing feels big. If nothing stands out, if everything is all the same. So in order for it to be interesting, you have to have larger objects to smaller objects, and that applies to levels as well, something that draws the eye. They discuss the feel of moving from tight spaces to larger areas, so say coming from a duct into a larger area, and how that might feel to walk into that. They wanted to highlight how large features like a giant tower would be a focus for the surrounding area, as players will always use that feature as a reference to where they are in the area, even if they're going to different points of interest all around it. It'll be the touchstone. They also discussed the process for level design, from white box and concept all the way to final product, and how they work with the other teams to ensure the original design and layout for the level remains intact through the process. One nice thing to hear them say was that the focus so far in Star Citizen has been on the visuals of outposts and locations, and less so on the gameplay. Historically, it's been more on the visuals. And they say that needs to change. There needs to be a better balance in the levels and areas between high fidelity visuals and actual engaging gameplay. This is nice to hear because, yeah, there's a lot of great looking places in Star Citizen that have absolutely nothing to do in them. So here's hoping that that starts to change a bit. Moving on to Star Citizen Live. This will be a fairly brief one. I highly suggest that you guys watch this episode. My summation won't do it justice. This was all about missions and how CIG makes them for the persistent universe. They took an hour to go into quite a bit of detail, actually, showing off a mission designed from start to finish for delivering titanium. We got a look at the actual tools they use for mission design, a tool they use to calculate the effort a mission requires and the reward you get from it. They showed how changing certain settings in the mission, like the amount of time it might take or adding a bit of danger, would affect the final reward. They loaded into the game after designing the mission in front of us and showed the new hauling mission, available in the Mobiglass, ready and waiting to go with full descriptions and details for the players available. Jared repeatedly highlighted that the numbers we were seeing on screen in these tools were in no way final and should not be taken as such, which, yeah, we should absolutely know. Again, I'm not going to go into great detail with this Star Citizen Live because this is one of those ones that they weren't giving out any new information that we don't know about, things coming to the persistent universe that we haven't been told about in upcoming roadmaps and the 3.2.4 patch. What it was more of a look into the process and how it's done. And if you're interested in that, I highly suggest you check it out. I found it fascinating. I just don't think a summary of mine does it justice. I think you kind of need to hear them talk about it while they're doing it in front of you. So link will be in the description along with Inside Star Citizen as well. And now come to the big part of the episode, and that is the update currently on the 3.24 patch that came out for Evocati tonight. I just dropped out of that before recording this video. It's getting late at night, and I wanted to share my fresh thoughts with you guys about it for the 2 hours I was able to play into it and tool around with it. I focused entirely on the hangar and cargo and whatnot. I never even attempted to leave. Not that it gave me a choice, but one thing I will say, if you've watched my prior video about it, the last patch was absolutely a nightmare when it came to crashing and server errors. This patch was spectacular for me in that aspect. I was monitoring the chat in the game, and I was monitoring the chat for the Evocati as well. And it was a mix for some people. Some of us were actually having fairly few bugs. Like, it was running well. Other people, depending on their server, were having problems. But it was fairly average. But the overall vibe we were getting was most people were not having anywhere near the level of crashes we were having on Friday. I can tell you for a fact, in the 2 hours I was playing with this beta, I only experienced one crash and one server crash. No, pardon me, 2 server crashes, both of which spun back up after about 3 or 4 minutes. They weren't short server errors, but they did spin back up again, and I was able to continue doing what I was doing in the hangar with the freight elevator. It did take some time for the kiosks to catch up to the server after it came back, but they did for me. Now, one of the things I wanted to do was find out about the auto loading for the cargo and the sending cargo to your freight elevator. I also wanted to find out about calling a ground vehicle up and putting it onto another ship, seeing how that all went. As far as a ground vehicle goes, I was able to summon up a Grey Cat, not a problem. A quad bike, for some reason, completely shorted out my my ASOP terminal, never showed up, and I wasn't able to do anything again. That was when I ended up quitting. But calling up a Grey Cat PTV was not a problem. I put it off to the corner. The first couple of tries, when I would summon in my cutlass to put it on, the Grey Cat would disappear. If it was even remotely close to the area of the floor where the new ship would come in, you had to have it quite a bit of ways away, pardon me. Once I got that off, I actually parked the damn thing right beside the terminal to call in the ships. Called in my cutlass, drove the PTV on top of, or onto the ramp, and as soon as I touched the ramp, I got charged with reckless driving. It told me that the PTV was going to be impounded, and in the ASOP terminal, when I looked later, it gave me a 50,000 credit fine to get the PTV back, all for just driving onto the ramp. I didn't cause any damage. I didn't go fast. I just, as slowly as you can with a mouse and keyboard, went up the ramp, and yeah, reckless driving and impounded, but it didn't actually impound the PTV until I put it back on the freight elevator and sent it back. Then it wouldn't let me call it because it was impounded. With the hoverbike, yeah, that just, I don't know what happened there. As soon as I called it in, I got teleported back to the main spaceport area, and after that the ASOP terminals would not work, even after I loaded back to the main menu and loaded back onto the same server. So that's obviously a bug report that I offered. We also had what was the other one? Oh, I put scrap onto the ship directly. Like, I purchased it from the TDD and had it auto load in 2 SCU boxes onto the Cutlass max cargo. Because I couldn't summon ships, I don't know if it actually showed up on the Cutlass yet. The cargo that I sent to the Area 18 inventory, that scrap was added in boxes that I requested to my freight elevator. That worked out perfectly fine. I was able to remove those boxes from the freight elevator, send them back down, send them back up. I actually had no problems with that at all. The one problem I did have was sending it, like the auto loading to the Cutlass. Yeah, I guess you could take the largest box as possible. It might go a little bit faster, I'm not sure. But in order, with 2 SCU boxes, to maximize the cargo capacity of a Cutlass Black, takes 15 minutes to auto load it, according to the kiosk. And that's how long it took. I had to wait for that to show up. Now, anybody who's played this game knows that even with 1 SCU boxes and a handheld tractor beam, it takes far less than 15 minutes to put those boxes onto a Cutlass. Obviously, as Jared said in Star Citizen Live, these numbers are not final. This will all be tweaked. But currently, right now, I think that these wait times are a little bit too long. We already have enough time wasters in Star Citizen. Now, this is not going to be a game that's friendly to people who want to just play for half an hour at a time. It's just not. But this is going to make it even more. From what someone was saying in chat, it almost sounds like it's supposed to take like 5.5 hours to auto load an A2. Now, yeah, it's a big cargo ship, but 5.5 hours? Now, I get where CIG is coming from with the okay, if it's going to take 5.5 hours, do something else. Take one of your other ships. Well, what if you're not in an area with one of your other ships? What if you've taken an A2 out to a Lagrange point to drop off, unrefined ore or whatnot, and it's going to take 5.5 hours to auto unload the ship? Or you can do it yourself, but still, that sounds like it's going to take a lot of time as well. It'll go better with a crew, and again, an A2 is a big ship. We'll have to see how this plays. I don't think people are quite getting how big of a change this physicalizing of the inventory is going to be to Star Citizen. This is an incredibly huge change that's going to actually slow down the pace of the game quite a bit, but also change how you play it. Because yeah, if you think about what CIG has said, if you go to a place and it's going to take 5 hours for the A2 to be unloaded, or you can do it yourself and that might take an hour or two, and you'd rather do something else, well then yeah, okay, you set your ship to unload for 5 hours and maybe you rent something else for the time being, or maybe you do have other ships, you're in a landing zone and you do a couple of bounties while that's going on. We'll see how this affects the game. I really think that we're all just starting to scratch the surface of the changes that physicalized cargo is going to bring to this game. You can tell that a lot of work has gone on behind the scenes to fix up the back end of this, just the way it worked, and especially the way everything came back, including the kiosks, after the server error, which wasn't a thing before in either of the prior two builds. So progress is being made. I'm hopeful. I look forward to the next patch, and as soon as I wake up in the morning, hopefully the patch is still running and I'll get to dive back into it. In the meantime, I've been RayJet Games, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. Sound off in the comments about Star Citizen and your thoughts. If you're in the Evocati and what your experience has been with it, I'd love to hear from you. Sign up if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet. According to my analytics, nearly 90% of the people checking out my channel haven't subscribed, so I'd really appreciate it. It would help me out so much if you did. Until next time, I've been RayJet Games, and I'll see you in the verse. Bye.